Long before the kingdoms of men ruled Westeros, the land was home to creatures of magic and mystery. In the ancient forests and wild landscapes, the children of the forest lived, small and elusive beings with powers beyond human understanding. But everything changed when a new presence arrived: humans. In 12,000 BC, the first men crossed the narrow sea from Essos, stepping onto the shores of Westeros for the first time. Armed with bronze weapons and a fierce determination, they were unlike anything the children had encountered before. These newcomers didn't come to live peacefully. They came to conquer, and conquer they did. The first men quickly began cutting down the forests, clearing the land for their settlements, their farms, and their people. The peaceful balance that had existed for centuries was shattered. The children, with their deep connection to nature, fought back. They wielded powerful magic, using the very land itself as a weapon. But the first men were relentless. Their numbers grew, their settlements spread, and their influence began to reshape Westeros in ways no one could have imagined. Yet, this wasn't just a war of bloodshed. It was a clash of cultures, of beliefs, and of ways of life. The first men brought with them new languages, new traditions, and a way of life that would lay the foundations for the world we now know. With every battle fought and every forest cut down, Westeros inched closer to becoming a land shaped by humans, rather than the mystical beings that had once called it home. But the story of the first men wasn't all conquest and destruction. Eventually, the endless fighting war on both sides, leading to an event that would forever change the course of Westeros's history: the Pact of the Isle of Faces. In this truce, the first men and the children of the forest agreed to share the land. The forests, once sacred and untouchable, would belong to the children, while the first men could keep the lands they had already claimed. It was a fragile peace, but a peace nonetheless. As time passed, the first men began to adopt the ways of the children. They took up the worship of the old gods, the same deities the children revered through their sacred weirwood trees. This blending of cultures would last for thousands of years, creating the unique bond between the people of the North and the ancient magic that still lingers in the land. But even as peace settled over Westeros, the legacy of the first men's arrival would echo throughout the ages. Their bloodlines would give rise to the great houses that would dominate the continent. Their customs and beliefs would shape the culture of the North, and in the shadows of history, their arrival would mark the beginning of darker forces stirring in the distant lands beyond the Wall. The first men may have brought with them civilization, but they also awakened something far more ancient, something that would one day rise again to threaten all of Westeros. The arrival of the first men had reshaped Westeros, but their conquest wasn't the only force to leave its mark on the land. Beneath the icy winds of the North, something far older than humans had begun to stir, and with it, a darkness that would cover the world: the Long Night. No one knows exactly when it began, but sometime around 8000 BC, Westeros plunged into an era of cold and darkness unlike anything it had ever seen before. The sun vanished from the sky, and for an entire generation, the land was gripped by an unrelenting winter. Crops failed, villages starved, and the snow stretched far beyond the north, blanketing nearly the entire continent in a harsh, unforgiving frost. It was during this time that the White Walkers, or the Others, as they were called in ancient tales, first emerged from the farthest reaches of the north. With them came death and destruction as they marched southward, leaving a trail of frozen corpses in their wake. Armed with weapons of ice, they sought not just to conquer, but to wipe out humanity entirely. The phrase, "Winter is coming," passed down through generations of House Stark, carries the weight of this cataclysmic event. It was more than just a warning of seasonal cold. It was a reminder of the terrible winter that had nearly claimed all of Westeros. And at the heart of it all were the White Walkers, who seemed to thrive in the darkness, unstoppable and unyielding. Desperate and on the brink of extinction, the first men who had once fought to conquer this land found themselves facing an enemy beyond their understanding. But they were not alone in their struggle. In an unprecedented move, the first men joined forces with their former enemies, the Children of the Forest. Together, they forged an alliance to stand against the tide of ice and death that threatened to consume them all. It was the Children of the Forest who discovered the key to fighting the White Walkers, dragonglass. This obsidian material, once merely a curious natural resource, became a powerful weapon capable of killing the otherwise invincible White Walkers. Armed with dragonglass blades and bolstered by the ancient magic of the Children, the first men managed to hold the line, pushing the White Walkers back into the frozen wilderness. But even with their combined strength, it wasn't just brute force that won the day. It was the emergence of legendary heroes. Figures like Azor Ahai, a warrior whose tale would be told in different forms across many cultures, led the charge against the darkness. According to myth, Azor Ahai wielded a sword of fire, Lightbringer, and fought to bring an end to the long night. His story, though shrouded in mystery, would echo down through the ages, a symbol of hope in the face of overwhelming evil. Alongside these heroes, the Night's Watch was born. This band of men swore an oath to defend the realms of men from threats beyond the Wall, a brotherhood forged in the fires of this long and bitter struggle. It was their vigilance, along with the sacrifices of many, that finally forced the White Walkers into retreat, ending the long night and bringing light back to Westeros. But though the long night ended, its memory never truly faded. The stories of the White Walkers became legends, their threat seemingly confined to the distant past. Yet, as the centuries passed, one truth remained: the White Walkers were not gone. They had only been pushed back, waiting, watching, and biding their time until the day they would return. And so the warnings of winter is coming lingered, passed from one generation to the next, reminding Westeros of a darkness that might one day rise again. The long night had ended, and the White Walkers were forced back into the icy wilderness from which they came. But the people of Westeros knew that the darkness they had faced was not gone for good. The White Walkers, though defeated, remained a looming threat in the distant north. And so, the first men and the Children of the Forest, who had once fought together to survive the long night, turned their attention to a new task: building a defense that would stand the test of time. That defense became one of the most iconic and imposing structures ever seen: the Wall. Stretching for hundreds of miles across the northernmost edge of Westeros, the Wall was more than just a barrier of ice and stone. It was a symbol of the vigilance and strength of the people who built it. Standing over 700 feet tall, its sheer size alone made it a marvel of engineering. But there was more to the wall than met the eye. This was no ordinary fortification. It was infused with ancient magic, woven into its very foundations to keep out the dangers lurking beyond the north. At the heart of this monumental project was a legendary figure, Bran the Builder. Known in the annals of history as the founder of House Stark and the builder of Winterfell, Bran's greatest achievement was the creation of the Wall. Legend has it that Bran didn't work alone. With the help of giants, the First Men, and the Children of the Forest, he combined both physical labor and mystical forces to construct this impenetrable barrier. Some say that Bran's knowledge of magic learned from the children was crucial in giving the wall its formidable strength. But what makes the wall truly remarkable isn't just its size or the effort it took to build. It's the magic that lies within it. The spells woven into the ice are said to be as old as Westeros itself, designed to protect the realms of men from the White Walkers and other dark forces beyond the wall. This ancient power made the wall not just a physical boundary, but a magical one, capable of holding back creatures that no ordinary structure could withstand. Alongside the wall came the creation of the Night's Watch, a brotherhood of men sworn to guard it. Clad in black, they took an oath to defend the realm from all that lay beyond, even at the cost of their lives. They were a living shield, standing between the living and the threats that still lurked in the frozen wasteland to the north. The Night's Watch wasn't just an army, it was a brotherhood of outcasts, nobles, and criminals alike, united by their common cause. For the men of the Night's Watch, their life on the wall was one of isolation and hardship. In the freezing cold, far from the comforts of the southern kingdoms, they stood vigil, watching for any sign that the ancient enemy might return. The Brothers of the Watch, though often forgotten by the rest of Westeros, became legends in their own right, defenders of the realm who gave everything to keep their fellow men safe. The wall itself became a symbol of the North's strength and resilience. It marked the boundary between the known world and the mysterious, dangerous lands beyond. But it was also a reminder, a physical representation of the price Westeros had paid to survive the long night, and the ongoing need to protect the realm from threats that could rise again at any moment. For thousands of years, the wall stood tall, its magic and strength unbroken. But like all things in Westeros, its significance wasn't just in the past. The wall's purpose would one day be tested once more. As the ancient enemies it was built to defend against stirred again in the far reaches of the north. The people of Westeros may have forgotten the White Walkers, but the wall remembered. And as the winds of winter began to rise once more, so too did the threats beyond the wall, waiting for the moment to return. As the wall stood tall in the north, guarding against the ancient threats beyond, another force was taking shape in the southern reaches of Westeros. This time, it wasn't forged from stone and magic, but from faith. The faith of the Seven, the dominant religion in Westeros, would come to influence the lives of countless people, shaping the politics, culture, and even the very identity of the realm. But its origins lie far across the sea, in the land of the Andals. It began with a vision. King Hugor of the Hill, one of the greatest kings of the Andals, is said to have received a revelation from the gods themselves. In his vision, 7 deities appeared before him, each representing a different facet of life and death. These 7 divine aspects, the father, the mother, the maiden, the crone, the warrior, the smith, and the stranger, came to form the foundation of what would become the faith of the 7. The new religion promised not only spiritual guidance, but a sense of unity and purpose for the Andals. And with that vision, the faith began to spread. When the Andals set their sights on Westeros, they brought more than just steel and fire. They brought their faith. Their invasion, which would sweep across much of the continent, wasn't just a conquest of land, but of belief. As the Andals made their way through the southern kingdoms, they converted many of the first men to the faith of the 7, replacing the old traditions and beliefs that had long governed the land. The ancient gods of the forest, worshipped by the first men, were slowly pushed aside as the 7 gained dominance. The arrival of the faith didn't just change the way people worshipped, it reshaped the very fabric of Westerosi society. With the Andals came new customs, laws, and a structured religious hierarchy that would become deeply entwined with the political landscape. The faith wasn't just a spiritual force, it was a political one. The establishment of the faith militant, a powerful religious order that wielded both sword and scripture, would later play a crucial role in the power struggles that gripped the realm. At the heart of the faith's influence was the High Septon, the spiritual leader of the faith of the 7. The position of the High Septon carried immense weight, as those who held the title had the power to bless or curse the rule of kings. Over time, the High Septons would become some of the most influential figures in the realm, with their decisions echoing through the halls of power. The faith and the Iron Throne were often at odds, with each struggling for control over the hearts and minds of the people. But the faith of the 7 wasn't just a tool of political power. It was deeply symbolic, with each of the 7 aspects representing a different part of the human experience. The father stood for justice, the mother for nurturing, the maiden for innocence, and the crone for wisdom. The warrior symbolized strength, the smith hard work, and the stranger, the most mysterious of the 7, represented death and the unknown. These aspects touched every corner of life, from birth to death, and shaped the way people in Westeros saw the world around them. As the faith took root in the southern regions of Westeros, its influence grew stronger. Great septs were built, where the faithful would come to worship, pray, and seek guidance. Weddings, coronations, and even funerals were often conducted under the watchful gaze of the 7, weaving the religion into the very traditions of the realm. Over time, the faith of the 7 became more than just a belief system. It became a way of life. Yet even as the faith spread across Westeros, not all regions embraced it. In the north, where the first men had long held sway, the worship of the old gods endured. The weir wood trees and God's woods remained sacred, and the people of the north held fast to the traditions passed down through the generations. This divide between the old gods of the north and the 7 of the south would become yet another fault line in the complex history of Westeros. And so, as the kingdoms of men rose and fell, the faith of the 7 remained a constant presence, its influence shaping the rulers who sought power and the people who lived under their rule. Like the wall in the north, the faith was a foundation, one that would withstand the tides of time, but also one that could become a battleground of its own. For while the faith preached unity and peace, its history was filled with strife, rebellion, and the constant struggle for control. And, as with so many things in Westeros, the influence of the faith would play a role in events yet to come. For centuries, the wall stood as the northernmost boundary of Westeros, separating the realms of men from the vast, frozen wilderness beyond. But even the mighty wall couldn't prevent every threat from crossing into the lands of the living. In 3000 BC, a group known as the Free Folk, often called the Wildlings by those in the south, managed to pass through the wall in an audacious invasion, bringing with them a culture and way of life vastly different from the feudal lords of Westeros. The Free Folk were not bound by the laws and traditions that shaped the lives of the people south of the wall. Living beyond the reach of kings and queens, they valued their freedom above all else. To them, the wall was less a barrier of protection and more a symbol of separation, a division between the so-called civilized world and their own. They rejected the hierarchy that ruled Westeros, seeing the crowns and castles as unnecessary shackles on the human spirit. Instead, they lived in small, scattered communities governed by leaders of their choosing, often selected by strength, wit, or respect. Their way of life, however, often brought them into conflict with the people of the north. The Wildlings, unlike the Westerosi, did not build cities or keep extensive farms. When resources were scarce, particularly during the long winters, they sought them elsewhere, sometimes by force. And so, in 3000 BC, a group of free folk, driven by the harshness of their homeland, passed covertly through the wall and ventured south, seeking to claim land and resources that were otherwise denied to them. But the North was not unguarded. House Stark, the ancient rulers of the North, had long been the first line of defense against any who sought to cross the wall. When the Free Folk invasion began, it was the Starks who met them in battle. Under the leadership of the head of House Stark, the northern armies were able to repel the invaders, driving the Wildlings back beyond the wall. The invasion, though ultimately unsuccessful, was a clear signal of the tensions that would continue to brew between the North and the Free Folk for centuries to come. The relationship between the Free Folk and the people of the North was, and remains, complicated. While the Wildlings were often seen by the people of Westeros as savage and lawless, their culture was far richer than many gave them credit for. They had their own traditions, their own legends, and their own sense of governance, one that was built on freedom rather than fealty. In many ways, they were misunderstood by those who lived within the structured society of the Seven Kingdoms. To the Wildlings, the men of the Night's Watch, and even the people of the North, were not protectors but oppressors, barriers to a life they believed was their birthright. And yet, for all their differences, there was a reluctant understanding between the Free Folk and those who lived south of the wall. They were not entirely enemies, nor could they be considered allies. They shared a land divided by ice, bound by a history of conflict and survival. The events of 3000 BC would set the tone for many future clashes between the Free Folk and the North. And though this particular invasion was thwarted, the spirit of defiance and freedom that drove the Wildlings would not fade. The Wildlings saw themselves as more than just invaders, They were people fighting for the right to live on their own terms, free from the rigid rules of kings and lords. That same spirit would later find its embodiment in Mance Rayder, a man born a member of the Night's Watch who defected to the Free Folk, eventually becoming their leader and uniting their scattered clans. Though Mance's story unfolds long after the events of this particular invasion, his belief in the freedom of the Free Folk and his determination to breach the wall would reflect the same desires that had driven the Wildlings centuries earlier. The tension between the Wildlings and the North was far from over, and as the winds of winter began to stir once more, the struggle between the Free Folk and the men of Westeros would rise again. The history of Westeros is forever entwined with the rise of the Targaryens, but their story begins long before their conquest of the Seven Kingdoms. In 114 BC, the Targaryen family fled their ancestral home of Valyria and settled on the volcanic island of Dragonstone, just off the coast of Westeros. This moment would mark the beginning of their long, complicated relationship with the continent, a relationship that would eventually reshape the fate of Westeros itself. The Targaryens' flight from Valyria wasn't a random act of chance. It was born from a vision. Daenerys Targaryen, known throughout history as Daenerys the Dreamer, had a prophetic dream that foretold the destruction of Valyria, the great empire built by dragon lords. In her vision, she saw flames and smoke consuming the land, its mighty cities crumbling under the force of cataclysmic eruptions. Her father, Lord Aegon Targaryen, took her warning seriously enough to do the unthinkable: leave Valyria behind. At the time, the decision to abandon Valyria must have seemed like madness. Valyria was the heart of the most powerful empire the world had ever known, a land of dragons and magic, where the Dragon Lords ruled with unmatched might. But Lord Aegon trusted his daughter's vision, and so he packed up his family and their dragons, leaving Valyria behind to settle on the isolated island of Dragonstone. It was a decision that would save their family and preserve the bloodline of the Dragon Lords. The Targaryens' decision to leave came just in time. Only 12 years later, Daenerys' prophecy came true in the most devastating way imaginable. The doom of Valyria, a series of catastrophic volcanic eruptions and earthquakes, ripped through the land, destroying everything in its path. The once great empire was reduced to ash and ruins, and with it, nearly all the other Valyrian families were wiped from existence. Only the Targaryens survived, their dragons and their legacy intact. Dragonstone, the island where they had taken refuge, was more than just a safe haven. It was shaped by the same volcanic forces that had destroyed Valyria, rich in the volcanic rock known as dragonglass, a material with its own dark significance in the history of Westeros. The island became the seat of House Targaryen, a fortress from which they could watch over the narrow sea and look toward the mainland. Though at the time the Targaryens were just one of many exiled Valyrian families, their decision to relocate to Dragonstone would lay the foundation for their rise to power. They were now the last Dragon Lords, the only family to still possess the mighty creatures that had once ruled the skies over Valyria. While the other houses of Westeros focused on their internal conflicts and power struggles, the Targaryens remained patient, biding their time on Dragonstone. In the years that followed, Dragonstone became more than just a seat of power. It became the launching point for the Targaryen legacy that would one day conquer Westeros. The Targaryens began to forge their own destiny, separate from the ruins of Valyria. And though they were few in number, they had something no one else had: dragons. The move to Dragonstone also set the stage for the Targaryens' eventual conquest of Westeros. The island, strategically located off the coast of the continent, allowed them to observe the political landscape of the Seven Kingdoms. They watched as the great houses of Westeros fought amongst themselves, unaware that a new power was quietly growing just across the sea. The story of the Targaryens is one of survival, ambition, and fire. Their journey from Valyria to Dragonstone marked the beginning of a new chapter, not just for their family, but for Westeros itself. What began as an act of survival would soon become a conquest that would change the course of history. And so, the Targaryens waited on Dragonstone, their eyes ever watchful, their dragons ever ready, as they prepared for the day when they would take their place at the heart of Westeros. In the annals of Westerosi history, there are few structures as infamous as Harrenhal. In 42 BC, Harrenhal, king of the Isles and Rivers, embarked on an audacious project, one that would become both a testament to his ambition and, ultimately, his downfall. The construction of Harrenhal, the largest and most imposing castle ever built in Westeros, began as a symbol of power, invincibility, and dominance. But as with so many grand undertakings in this land of fire and ice, Harrenhal's legacy would be far more tragic than its creator could have ever imagined. Harrenhal, driven by his desire to cement his place in history, envisioned Harrenhal as a fortress that would stand forever, unmatched in both size and strength. Its towers were designed to rise so high they would kiss the clouds, and its walls were built to repel any army foolish enough to try and besiege it. Harren's vision was clear. Harrenhal would be the seat of his power, a fortress so grand that it would outshine every castle in the land. The castle's sheer size and the resources required to build it stretched the wealth of the Riverlands to its limits. Vast amounts of timber, stone, and labor were poured into the construction, a project that would take decades to complete. As the years passed, the construction of Harrenhal consumed the reigns of multiple kings. What began under Harrenhal continued long after his death, with his descendants carrying on the monumental task. 40 years of labor, sacrifice, and ambition were poured into its walls. The castle grew taller, its towers more imposing, its halls large enough to hold entire armies. Harrenhal was designed to be impregnable, a fortress that no army could ever hope to breach. Its completion was meant to be the crowning achievement of the Hoare dynasty, a fortress that would stand eternal. But as the final stones were laid and Harrenhal's massive gates were sealed, a far greater force was already making its way toward the shores of Westeros. Aegon the Conqueror, with his dragons, had set his sights on the Seven Kingdoms. While Harrenhal had focused on building walls to defend against men, he had not anticipated the arrival of a power unlike anything Westeros had seen before: dragons. As Aegon's conquest unfolded, the might of his dragons proved unstoppable. No matter how high the walls or how thick the defenses, nothing could withstand the fiery wrath of Balerion the Black Dread, the largest and most fearsome of Aegon's dragons. When Aegon's forces reached Harrenhal, King Harrenhal took refuge within his great fortress, confident that its immense size and strength would keep him safe. After all, no army had ever taken Harrenhal, and its walls were said to be impenetrable. But walls of stone were no match for dragonfire. Balerion unleashed his fury upon Harrenhal, and the castle that had taken 4 decades to build was reduced to a smoldering ruin in a matter of moments. The towers that once kissed the clouds melted under the intense heat, their stone walls collapsing in on themselves. King Harren and his entire line were wiped out, burned alive within the very castle that was meant to protect them. Harrenhal, the grandest fortress ever built, had fallen. Yet the destruction of Harrenhal wasn't the end of its story. In the years that followed, the castle became infamous not only for its size and its tragic fall, but for the curse that seemed to hang over it. After the Hoare dynasty perished, Harrenhal passed through the hands of many noble families, but none could hold it for long. Every family that claimed Harrenhal fell to ruin, as if the castle itself were cursed by the fiery death of its original builder. The mighty fortress, once a symbol of invincibility, became a place of misfortune and despair. The curse of Harrenhal, as it came to be known, haunted its halls, with each new occupant meeting a tragic end. The great walls that were meant to stand as a monument to the power of men became a reminder of the forces beyond their control. Harrenhal, once the most ambitious project in Westeros, now stands as a ruin, a symbol of hubris and the inevitability of fate. Harrenhal's legacy endures, but not as its creator intended. It serves as a stark reminder that no matter how high men build, no matter how strong their walls, there are forces in the world, whether dragon or curse, that can bring even the mightiest of fortresses crashing down. The fractured kingdoms of Westeros had long been a land of rivalries, blood feuds, and shifting alliances, with each region vying for power and dominance over the others. But in 2 BC, a new force arrived from across the narrow sea, one that would forever change the political landscape of the continent. Aegon Targaryen, alongside his sisters Visenya and Rhaenys, launched an invasion that would see the 7 kingdoms united under a single rule, the rule of House Targaryen. This was no ordinary conquest, for Aegon had a weapon that none of the lords of Westeros could match: dragons. Aegon's ambition was as vast as it was clear: to unite the fractured kingdoms of Westeros under one banner, to bring peace and stability to a land torn apart by centuries of conflict. With his 3 dragons, Balerion, Vhagar, and Meraxes, Aegon knew that he had the power to reshape the continent. The great lords of Westeros had their castles and their armies, but Aegon had fire. The conquest began with a series of swift and brutal campaigns. Aegon's forces landed on the eastern shores of Westeros, where he quickly established a foothold. His armies, bolstered by the power of his dragons, swept through the land, taking castle after castle, city after city. But it wasn't just Aegon's military prowess that secured his victories. It was the sheer terror of the dragons, creatures that could burn entire armies in a matter of moments. The sight of Balerion the Black Dread soaring through the sky, his massive wings blotting out the sun, struck fear into the hearts of even the bravest warriors. One of the most decisive moments of Aegon's conquest came at Harrenhal, the largest and most formidable castle in Westeros. Harrenhal, who had believed his fortress to be impenetrable, met his end when Aegon's dragon, Balerion reduced Harrenhal to a smoldering ruin. The walls that had taken decades to build melted under dragonfire, and Harren and his entire line were wiped out in an instant. This was the power Aegon wielded, and it was a power that no lord could stand against. But the conquest didn't end at Harrenhal. Aegon's forces marched west, where the combined armies of the Reach and the Westerlands gathered to oppose him. This battle, known as the Field of Fire, would be one of the most significant in Westerosi history. As the armies of House Gardner and House Lannister prepared to meet Aegon in battle, they believed they could overwhelm his forces with sheer numbers. But they had not reckoned with the dragons. In a matter of minutes, Aegon unleashed all 3 of his dragons upon the battlefield, incinerating thousands of men in a sea of fire. The combined might of the Reach and the Westerlands crumbled before the onslaught, and both regions fell under Aegon's rule. One by one, the kingdoms of Westeros submitted to Aegon's might. But in the north, Torrhen Stark, the king in the north, faced a difficult decision. With news of Aegon's conquests reaching Winterfell, Torrhen knew that the north could not stand against the dragons. He gathered his bannermen and marched south, prepared to meet Aegon on the battlefield. But when Torrhen arrived at the banks of the Trident and saw Aegon's army and the shadow of Balerion looming overhead, he made a choice that would shape the future of the North. Rather than see his people burn, Torrhen Stark bent the knee to Aegon Targaryen, becoming the first king in the North to swear fealty to a foreign ruler. In doing so, Torrhen ensured the survival of his people and his house. The North would remain intact, with the Starks retaining their lands and titles, though now they would serve as loyal bannermen to the Iron Throne. This moment of submission would earn Torrhen the title the King Who Knelt, but it also marked the beginning of a long, complex relationship between the North and the Crown. With 6 of the 7 kingdoms now under his rule, Aegon Targaryen had all but completed his conquest. Dorne, the southernmost kingdom, would remain independent for many years, resisting Aegon's dragons through guerrilla tactics and cunning strategies. But even without Dorne, Aegon's victory was complete, and he established his seat of power in the newly constructed capital of King's Landing. It was here, on the site of his greatest victory, that Aegon forged the Iron Throne, a seat of power made from the swords of his defeated enemies, melted down by dragon fire. The Iron Throne would become the symbol of Targaryen rule, a reminder of the brutal conquest that had united the 7 kingdoms. For nearly 300 years, the Targaryens would rule Westeros from this throne, their dragons serving as both their greatest weapon and their most potent symbol of power. The legacy of Aegon's conquest would echo through the ages, influencing the actions of future rulers and shaping the fate of Westeros. From Daenerys Targaryen's quest to reclaim the throne to Robert Baratheon's rebellion against the last Targaryen king, Aegon's shadow loomed large over the history of the realm. His conquest was not just a moment in time, it was the foundation upon which the future of Westeros was built. For nearly 2 centuries, the Targaryen dynasty had ruled Westeros, their reign symbolized by the creatures that had brought them victory, the dragons. From Aegon the Conqueror's fiery campaign to the continued expansion of Targaryen power, dragons were the ultimate source of strength and fear. But by 153 AC, the last of these magnificent beasts took its final breath, marking the end of an era that had shaped the destiny of an entire continent. The decline of the dragons did not happen overnight. After Aegon I's conquest, the Targaryens continued to breed and raise dragons, using them to maintain their dominance over the Seven Kingdoms. But as the years passed, the once fearsome creatures that had set cities ablaze and won wars with a single beat of their wings began to shrink. With each new generation, the dragons became smaller, weaker, and less formidable. It was as though the magic that had once fueled their fire was slowly fading from the world. By the time Aegon III, known to history as Aegon the Dragonbane, ascended to the Iron Throne, the days of the Targaryen dragons were numbered. Aegon III did not earn his grim nickname by slaying dragons, but rather for the misfortune of ruling during their extinction. Under his reign, the last known dragon in Westeros perished, leaving the realm without the creatures that had made the Targaryens so powerful. Though Aegon III is often blamed for the death of the last dragon, it was not his hand that caused their demise. Rather, it was a slow, inevitable decline, one that had begun long before he took the throne. Aegon III's inability to hatch new dragons was seen as a failure, a symbol of the Targaryens' fading power. Despite numerous efforts, no more dragons would be born during his reign, or for many generations to come. The death of the last dragon signified more than just the loss of a mythical beast. It represented the loss of the Targaryens' greatest weapon, the very thing that had elevated them above all other houses in Westeros. Without dragons, the Targaryens were left vulnerable, their grip on the realm weakened by the loss of the creatures that had once ensured their dominance. The political consequences of the dragon's extinction were profound. Without their dragon fire to keep rebellious lords in line, the Targaryens became more susceptible to the shifting allegiances and power plays that defined Westerosi politics. The once untouchable dynasty now faced increased rebellion, political intrigue, and challenges to their rule. Where once a single dragon could quell an uprising or burn a traitor's castle to the ground, the Targaryens now had to rely on the same strategies, armies, and alliances as the other great houses. For Aegon III, the burden of ruling without dragons cast a long shadow over his reign. Though he successfully maintained the Targaryen line on the throne, his time as king is remembered as one of mourning and loss, a reign where the Targaryen legacy of dragon lords came to an end. The death of the last dragon was not just a personal failure for Aegon, but a defining moment in the history of the dynasty itself. From that point forward, the Targaryens were no longer dragon lords, but rulers like any other, dependent on men, armies, and political alliances to maintain their hold on power. Yet even in death, the dragons left an indelible mark on the Targaryen legacy. Though the last dragon perished in 153 AC, the memory of these creatures persisted, their shadow looming large over the history of Westeros. The Targaryens continued to adorn their banners with the sigil of the three-headed dragon, and the Iron Throne, constructed from the melted swords of their enemies, remained a testament to the fire and blood that had once ruled the realm. The hope of the dragon's return never fully disappeared, and whispers of their possible resurrection haunted the dreams of many across the centuries. This hope would be reignited centuries later when Daenerys Targaryen, the last scion of House Targaryen, miraculously hatched 3 dragons of her own. her dragons, Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion, became the first to soar over Westeros in generations, reigniting both fear and awe across the land. The legacy of the dragons lived on in Daenerys, a symbol of her house's ancient power and the return of a long-dormant force that had once shaped the fate of Westeros. Though the last dragon perished in 153 AC, the fire of the Targaryens would not be extinguished forever. The blood of the dragons still flowed through their veins, and as history would show, sometimes all it takes is a spark to rekindle the flames of a forgotten age. For nearly 300 years, House Targaryen had ruled over Westeros, their dragons long gone, but their legacy of fire and blood still powerful. However, by the final years of their reign, that legacy had become a shadow of its former glory, and the realm stood on the brink of collapse. At the center of this turmoil was King Aerys II, remembered by history as the Mad King. His reign, once filled with promise, spiraled into cruelty, paranoia, and madness, leading to one of the most pivotal moments in Westerosi history, Robert's Rebellion. Aerys II had not always been the tyrant he would later become. In his youth, he showed great potential, a king who might have restored the strength and honor of the Targaryen line. But as the years went on, Aerys's mind began to unravel. His reign became defined by suspicion and violence as he grew increasingly obsessed with the idea that his enemies, both real and imagined, were plotting to overthrow him. His descent into madness was slow but undeniable, and with it came an ever-growing cruelty. The Mad King's penchant for burning his perceived enemies alive with wildfire became a symbol of his reign, earning him the title that would haunt his legacy forever. But it wasn't just Aerys's madness that triggered the rebellion. It was a single act that sent the realm spiraling into war. In 282 AC, Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, Aerys's eldest son, allegedly kidnapped Lyanna Stark, the betrothed of Robert Baratheon, a powerful lord from the Stormlands. This act was seen as a direct affront to the honor of House Stark and House Baratheon, two of the most powerful noble families in Westeros. The abduction of Lyanna, shrouded in mystery and controversy, ignited a spark of rebellion that would soon engulf the entire realm. The anger of House Stark and House Baratheon led to open rebellion, with Robert Baratheon, Eddard Stark, and Jon Arryn leading the charge against the Targaryen dynasty. It wasn't just the personal vendetta of these men that drove the uprising. Aerys's madness had alienated many of the great houses of Westeros, who saw in Robert an opportunity to rid the realm of the Targaryens once and for all. What began as a conflict over honor soon turned into a full-scale war for the Iron Throne. Robert Baratheon, a fierce warrior and a natural leader, quickly became the face of the rebellion. His prowess in battle, particularly at the Battle of the Trident, would prove decisive in the outcome of the war. It was on the banks of the Trident that Robert faced Rhaegar Targaryen in single combat, the two men clashing in a battle that would determine the fate of the realm. In the end, Robert's warhammer struck Rhaegar down, shattering the prince's chest and leaving his body to sink beneath the waters of the river, the fabled rubies of his armor scattering in the currents. With Rhaegar's death, the Targaryen cause was all but lost. But the final blow would come not on the battlefield, but within the very walls of King's Landing. As the capital fell to the forces of Robert's rebellion, King Aerys II, mad with fear and rage, ordered the city to be burned to the ground with wildfire. But before his mad vision could be realized, Aerys was betrayed by one of his most trusted knights, Sir Jaime Lannister of the King's Guard. Jaime, who had sworn to protect the king, instead chose to end Aerys's life, stabbing him in the back during the sack of King's Landing. The act of betrayal earned Jaime the infamous title of Kingslayer, a name that would follow him for the rest of his life, staining his honor in the eyes of many. Yet, for Jaime, his actions had been a necessity, an act to save the people of King's Landing from the Mad King's final destructive orders. With the death of Aerys II, the Targaryen dynasty came crashing down. The rebellion had succeeded, and Robert Baratheon, the man who had slain Rhaegar, ascended to the Iron Throne, marking the end of nearly 300 years of Targaryen rule. The once great house that had united Westeros with dragons was now shattered. The remaining members of House Targaryen, including Aerys's surviving children Viserys and the infant Daenerys, fled across the narrow sea into exile, far from the Iron Throne their family had once ruled. But though the Targaryens had fallen, their story was far from over. The blood of the dragon still flowed through the veins of Viserys and Daenerys, and the dream of reclaiming the Iron Throne would burn within them for years to come. For Westeros, the rebellion was the dawn of a new age, but it was also the beginning of a long and dangerous path that would one day see the Targaryens rise again. The fall of House Targaryen might have seemed inevitable by the time of Robert's rebellion, but their rise to power had been equally filled with moments of triumph and mystery. After Aegon the Conqueror had united 6 of the 7 kingdoms under his rule, one land remained untouched by his dragons and armies: Dorne. This sun-scorched kingdom, with its rugged terrain and defiant spirit, resisted Aegon's conquest in a way that no other region of Westeros could. But even the mighty Aegon, who had bent lords and kings to his will, was forced to change course when faced with the unyielding Dornish. And at the heart of this tale lies one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of Westerosi history: Aegon I's mysterious letter. After the conquest of Westeros, Aegon's dragons had laid waste to armies and castles, yet Dorne stood defiant. Led by House Martell, the Dornish people proved to be a different kind of enemy. Instead of engaging Aegon's forces in open battle, the Dornish lords used guerrilla warfare, drawing Aegon's armies into the unforgiving desert terrain, where the heat and isolation weakened even the mightiest soldiers. It was a game of attrition, one that the Dornish played masterfully. Even Meraxes, one of Aegon's dragons, was brought down by a well-aimed bolt from the Dornish forces, killing Aegon's beloved sister Rhaenys in the process. But despite the loss, Dorne could not be fully conquered, remaining a thorn in Aegon's side. For years, Dorne maintained its independence, eluding Aegon's attempts to bring it under his rule. The Targaryens could not break Dorne's will, and for a time it seemed as though the standoff would continue indefinitely. But then, something changed. A peace was brokered. A peace that surprised both Aegon's enemies and his allies. What made this truce even more baffling was the mysterious nature of how it came to be. According to legend, it was a single letter that altered the course of history. Prince Nemor Martell of Dorne sent his daughter, Princess Daria, to King's Landing to negotiate peace. With her, she carried the skull of Meraxes, a grim reminder of the dragon that had once laid waste to her homeland. But it was not the skull that held the true power that day. It was the letter. When Princess Daria handed Aegon a message from her father, it is said that the conqueror read it in silence, his expression growing darker with each passing moment. By the time he had finished, Aegon's grip on the letter was so tight that his hand bled from where the parchment had cut into his skin. Without a word, he threw the letter into the fire. What could have been written in that letter to cause such a reaction from Aegon, the man who had united most of Westeros through fire and blood? No one knows for certain. The terms of the peace treaty were simple. Dorne would remain independent, and the Iron Throne would recognize that independence. But the contents of the letter have been lost to history, leaving only speculation in its wake. Many have wondered what Prince Nemor could have said to convince Aegon to agree to such terms. One popular theory suggests that the letter contained a threat regarding Rhaenys, Aegon's sister, whose body had never been found after Meraxes was brought down. Some believe that Prince Nemor held Rhaenys captive and used her as leverage to force Aegon into peace. Others speculate that the letter revealed some other dark secret, one that was powerful enough to make even the mighty conqueror reconsider his plans for conquest. Whatever the truth may be, Aegon's change of heart was swift and final. He agreed to the peace with Dorne, setting aside his ambition to bring the Southern Kingdom into the fold by force. In a rare act of diplomacy, Aegon himself later traveled to Sunspear, the seat of House Martell, to cement the peace with Prince Nemor. It was a moment of unity, though one shrouded in the mystery of what had passed between these two rulers. The legacy of that peace would endure for generations. Dorne remained independent for many years, its sovereignty respected by the Iron Throne. Eventually, Dorne would join the Seven Kingdoms, not through conquest, but through marriage, as the bloodlines of House Targaryen and House Martell were united. But the letter that started it all, the letter that turned fire and blood into peace, remains one of the most intriguing unsolved mysteries in the history of Westeros. What was in that letter? Was it a threat, a promise, or something far more sinister? We may never know. But whatever it contained, it was enough to bring peace between the most powerful ruler Westeros had ever known and the one kingdom that defied him. As we journey through the rich history and legends of Westeros, few tales capture the imagination quite like that of Azor Ahai and the prophecy of the prince that was promised. While much of Westerosi history is steeped in political intrigue and battles for power, there are stories of a far more mystical nature, stories of a hero destined to save the world from darkness. One such legend has shaped the beliefs of an entire religion, and it continues to echo throughout the events that unfold in the modern era of Westeros. This is the story of Azor Ahai, the legendary hero who wielded the sword Lightbringer, and the prophecy that foretells his return. Long ago, during the time of the Long Night, when the world was plunged into darkness and the White Walkers first threatened the realms of men, a great hero rose to fight against the forces of evil. This hero, known as Azor Ahai, was no ordinary warrior. According to legend, he was chosen by the gods to lead the fight against the darkness. Wielding a sword imbued with magical power, a sword called Lightbringer. But the story of how Lightbringer was forged is one of the most tragic and profound in all of Westerosi lore. To create a weapon powerful enough to defeat the forces of darkness, Azor Ahai attempted to forge Lightbringer 3 times. The first attempt failed when the sword shattered after being tempered in water. The second attempt was no more successful as the sword broke again after being tempered in the heart of a lion. But it was the third attempt that sealed Azor Ahai's place in history. This time, he realized that only a great personal sacrifice would unlock the full power of the blade. With a heavy heart, he called upon his beloved wife, Nissa Nissa, and drove the sword into her heart. As her blood flowed, the magic within Lightbringer was unleashed, and the sword burned with a blinding light. It was with this weapon, forged through sacrifice and love, that Azor Ahai fought back the darkness and saved the world. But the legend of Azor Ahai did not end with the forging of Lightbringer. According to prophecy, Azor Ahai would be reborn as the prince that was promised, a figure destined to return when the world once again faced the threat of darkness. This prophecy, closely tied to the religion of R'hllor, the Lord of Light, has persisted for generations, with followers of R'hllor believing that the prince that was promised will lead the fight against the White Walkers during their return. As the events of A Song of Ice and Fire unfold, this ancient prophecy resurfaces, driving the actions and beliefs of many key players in Westeros. At the heart of this prophecy is the question, who will be the reincarnation of Azor Ahai, the hero destined to save the world? Several characters are believed to be potential candidates for this role, and as the story progresses, speculation shifts between them. For a time, Stannis Baratheon, the stern and ambitious lord, is thought to be the prince that was promised. This belief is largely driven by Melisandre, a priestess of R'hllor, who interprets her visions and prophecies as signs pointing to Stannis as the chosen one. She is convinced that he is the reincarnation of Azor Ahai, and her unwavering faith in this belief guides many of her decisions, including her controversial actions throughout the war for the Iron Throne. However, as events continue to unfold, doubts arise about whether Stannis truly is the prince that was promised. Melisandre's faith is shaken, and other candidates emerge as possible fulfillments of the prophecy. Jon Snow, with his leadership, mysterious heritage, and eventual resurrection, becomes a key figure in the speculation surrounding Azor Ahai's rebirth. His actions in the fight against the White Walkers and his central role in the defense of the North lead many to believe that he may be the hero of legend. Daenerys Targaryen, too, is seen by some as a potential candidate. With her dragons and her quest to reclaim the Iron Throne, Daenerys embodies many of the qualities associated with Azor Ahai: strength, sacrifice, and a burning desire to bring justice to the world. Her role as a liberator of the oppressed and her connection to fire and blood make her a compelling figure in the eyes of those who believe in the prophecy. The religious significance of the Azor Ahai legend cannot be understated. For the followers of R'hllor, the return of the prince that was promised is not just a prophecy, it is a guiding force that shapes their faith and their actions. Melisandre's visions, her manipulation of events, and even the resurrection of Jon Snow are all tied to her belief in this prophecy. She sees herself as an instrument of the Lord of Light, destined to ensure that Azor Ahai's rebirth will come to pass. At its core, the story of Azor Ahai reflects a broader theme that runs through the history of Westeros. The idea that great heroes must be willing to make great sacrifices. Just as Azor Ahai sacrificed his beloved wife to forge Lightbringer, those who seek to fulfill the prophecy of the prince that was promised must be prepared to sacrifice everything for the greater good. This theme of sacrifice, destiny, and the burden of leadership is woven throughout the narrative of Game of Thrones, reminding us that the fight against darkness is never without cost. As the final chapters of the story unfold, the question of who will truly be Azor Ahai reborn remains unanswered. But whether it is Jon, Daenerys, or another unexpected figure, the legend of Azor Ahai and the prince that was promised continues to captivate both characters and readers alike, serving as a symbol of hope and a reminder of the sacrifices that must be made to save the world from darkness. As the legends of Westeros unfold, we encounter stories that blur the line between history and myth. Among the free folk, one such tale is passed down through generations, a story of cunning, romance, and tragic fate. It is the tale of Bael the Bard, a figure whose exploits left an indelible mark on the Starks of Winterfell and the free folk alike. His story, filled with deception and love, is as much a tale of revenge as it is a reminder of the complexities of fate. According to legend, Bael the Bard was not only a renowned raider, but also a man of extraordinary wit and charm. His story begins with a personal vendetta against Lord Brandon Stark of Winterfell. Bael, it is said, was insulted by the Lord of Winterfell, a slight that would not go unanswered. But rather than seeking bloody revenge as one might expect from a raider, Bael chose a different path, one that would haunt the Stark family for generations. Disguised as a singer, Bael made his way into Winterfell under the guise of peace. There he played for the Starks and impressed Lord Brandon Stark with his music and clever words. When asked what reward he would like for his performance, Bael requested the most beautiful flower in Winterfell's gardens. Lord Brandon, unwitting of Bael's true identity and intent, offered him a blue winter rose, a symbol of northern beauty, and, unbeknownst to him, a signal of what was to come. The next morning, Lord Stark awoke to find that his only daughter had disappeared from her bed, with nothing left behind but a single blue rose. The Starks searched high and low for her, but she was nowhere to be found. The disappearance of Stark's daughter caused great sorrow, and with no heir in sight, the Stark line faced the possibility of extinction. Winterfell, a house known for its strength and stability, had been shaken to its core by a single cunning act. But while the Starks mourned their loss, Bael and the young Stark maiden were hidden beneath their very feet. For years they lived in secret within the crypts of Winterfell, a place shrouded in ancient lore and mystery. The passage of time allowed the legend to grow, but when Bael and the Stark daughter finally emerged from the crypts, they were not alone. They had a child, a son, born of both Stark blood and the free folk. This child, unbeknownst to many, would eventually become the next Lord Stark, restoring the line that Bael had so carefully dismantled. Yet, as is often the case in Westerosi tales, the story of Bael the Bard does not end with happiness. Time passed, and the child grew into a man, taking his place as the new Lord of Winterfell. Bael, meanwhile, returned to his life beyond the wall, once again leading the free folk. But fate had a cruel twist in store. In a battle between the Free Folk and the Starks, the son of Bael, now grown and unaware of his true parentage, faced his father on the battlefield. It was there that the son, oblivious to the bond they shared, killed Bael, bringing his head back to Winterfell as a trophy of war. It was only upon seeing the severed head of her former lover that Bael's son's mother realized the tragic truth. The man her son had killed was none other than his own father. Overcome with grief, she took her own life, unable to bear the weight of the loss. The cycle of love and revenge had come full circle, leaving nothing but sorrow in its wake. For the Free Folk, Bael the Bard is a celebrated figure, remembered as one of their greatest raiders and heroes. His story, though tragic, is a testament to his cunning and skill, a reminder that even the most powerful houses of Westeros can be brought low by the actions of a single man. But beyond his reputation as a raider, Bael's tale is also one of love and loss, of how fate can twist even the most carefully laid plans into tragedy. The legend of Bael the Bard also highlights the deep cultural divide between the Free Folk and the noble houses of Westeros. Where the Free Folk value freedom, cunning, and personal strength, the noble houses are bound by tradition, duty, and family honor. Bael's infiltration of Winterfell and the near extinction of the Stark line is a stark reminder of the unpredictable nature of those who live beyond the wall. To the Starks, Bael's actions were a violation, but to the Free Folk, they were a triumph of wit over might. In many ways, Bael's story mirrors themes seen in the main narrative of Game of Thrones. Jon Snow, a man caught between two worlds, shares a similarly complex relationship with the Free Folk. His love for Ygritte, a wildling woman, and his divided loyalties between the Night's Watch and the Free Folk echo the tension between Bael and the Starks. Both men find themselves trapped between duty and love, between the expectations of their world and the desires of their heart. Bael the Bard's story, though one of legend, serves as a reminder of the intricate web of fate that binds the people of Westeros. It is a tale of revenge that nearly wiped out a great house, of love that transcended borders, and of the tragic consequences that arise when the past cannot be escaped. The history of Westeros is filled with tales of kings, queens, and battles, but sometimes the most enduring stories are those of love and loss. One such story is that of Jenny of Oldstones, a common girl who captured the heart of a prince and left her mark on history, not through power or politics, but through love and tragedy. Jenny's story is a reminder that, in a world where duty often comes before desire, sometimes love is the most powerful force of all, even if it leads to heartbreak. Jenny of Oldstones, as her name suggests, was not born into nobility. She was a simple girl from the Riverlands, living in a place long forgotten by time. But fate had other plans for Jenny. It was there, in the quiet and rural corners of Westeros, that she met Prince Duncan Targaryen, heir to the Iron Throne. Duncan, known for his adventurous spirit and charm, fell deeply in love with Jenny, and their love defied all expectations. Prince Duncan's affection for Jenny was not just a fleeting romance. He loved her so deeply that he was willing to sacrifice everything for her, including his claim to the Iron Throne. At the time, Duncan was betrothed to a daughter of House Baratheon, an important match arranged by his father, King Aegon V, to secure alliances and strengthen the Targaryen hold on the realm. But Duncan, in a move that shocked the realm, broke off the engagement and married Jenny for love, setting aside his duty and any thought of power. This decision did not sit well with his father, King Aegon V. Aegon, known for his reformist ideals and desire to strengthen the realm, saw Duncan's marriage to a commoner as a blow to the Targaryen legacy. He tried to annul the marriage, hoping to bring Duncan back into the fold of royal duty. But Duncan refused. For him, love was more important than the throne. It was a choice that would have far-reaching consequences for the Targaryen line, especially as Duncan's decision removed him from the line of succession, leaving others to step forward in his place. Jenny's connection to the Targaryens wasn't just defined by her relationship with Duncan. She was also a close companion to the Ghost of High Heart, a mysterious woods witch known for her powerful prophecies. The Ghost of High Heart was said to have foresight that even the Targaryens respected, and one of her most significant prophecies centered on the future of the realm. She foretold that the union of Prince Aerys and Princess Rhaella, Duncan's younger brother and sister, would bring forth the prince that was promised, a savior destined to lead the fight against darkness. It was this prophecy that influenced King Aegon V's decision to marry Aerys and Rhaella, a union that would eventually produce Rhaegar Targaryen. Though the prophecy spoke of a great destiny, it also hinted at the turbulent future of House Targaryen, as the events surrounding the prince that was promised would come to play a significant role in the Targaryen downfall and eventual resurgence. Jenny of Oldstones, through her friendship with the Ghost of High Heart, became indirectly tied to the fate of the realm. Her presence a quiet but meaningful thread in the larger tapestry of Targaryen history. But Jenny's story would end in tragedy. She is believed to have perished in the fire at Summerhall, one of the most mysterious and catastrophic events in Targaryen history. Summerhall was meant to be a grand celebration, but it turned into a disaster that claimed the lives of many, including King Aegon V and Prince Duncan. The exact cause of the fire remains shrouded in mystery, though many believe it was linked to Aegon's obsession with hatching dragons, an obsession that ultimately led to his downfall. Jenny's death, along with Duncan's, marked the end of a love story that had defied convention but could not escape the cruel hands of fate. Their love, though passionate and true, was consumed by the flames of Summerhall, leaving behind only memories and a haunting legacy. Jenny of Oldstones, the common girl who loved a prince, became a symbol of the fragility of love in a world dominated by power and duty. Her story, though tragic, lives on in song. In Game of Thrones, her tale is immortalized in the haunting ballad Jenny of Oldstones. The song reflects the themes of loss, love, and the passage of time, echoing the fate of both Jenny and Duncan. The lyrics speak of Jenny dancing with her ghosts, a poignant reminder of how love can linger even after death. It is a song that touches the hearts of those who hear it, a tribute to a love that, while doomed, left an indelible mark on the history of Westeros. Though Jenny of Oldstones was not born into nobility, her love story with Prince Duncan Targaryen is remembered as one of the most touching and tragic tales in Westeros. It is a story that reminds us that, in a world where power and legacy often come before all else, love can still shine through, even if only for a moment, before being lost to history. The stories of Westeros are filled with relics of power, artifacts that carry legends as ancient as the wall itself. One such artifact is the fabled Horn of Winter, a legendary object said to possess the ability to bring down the wall and awaken giants from the earth. Though shrouded in myth and mystery, the Horn of Winter has become a symbol of the forces that lie beyond the wall. Forces that have been held at bay for centuries, but threaten to be unleashed once more. The legend of the Horn of Winter dates back to the time of Joramun, a fabled king beyond the wall who united the free folk in their fight against the Night's Watch and the lords of Westeros. Joramun, as the story goes, blew the Horn of Winter to awaken giants from the earth, massive creatures who aided him in his battles. But the Horn's power went far beyond summoning these ancient beings. According to legend, the Horn had the ability to destroy the wall itself, the great structure built by Bran the Builder to protect the realms of men from the terrors of the far north. For centuries, the Horn of Winter has remained a part of free folk lore, passed down in songs and stories told around campfires in the frozen wilderness beyond the wall. To the free folk, the Horn is a symbol of their defiance, a reminder that the wall and the Night's Watch that guards it are not invincible. It is said that whoever possesses the Horn holds the power to bring the wall crumbling down, freeing the people of the north to pass through to the lands beyond, without fear of the frozen barrier that has kept them at bay for so long. During the events of A Song of Ice and Fire, this ancient legend becomes more than just a story. While exploring the Fist of the First Men, a remote and ancient site north of the wall, Samwell Tarly stumbles upon what he believes might be the legendary Horn of Winter. The horn, buried alongside dragonglass weapons, sparks excitement and speculation among the Night's Watch. Could this simple, weathered artifact really be the key to bringing down the wall? Despite the excitement, the horn's true nature is never confirmed, and it remains an object of mystery, its powers untested and unknown. As the story unfolds, Mance Rayder, the current king beyond the wall and leader of the Free Folk, claims to possess the Horn of Winter. He uses it as a bargaining tool, threatening to blow the horn and bring down the wall unless the Night's Watch allows the Wildlings to pass through safely. This moment brings the legend of the Horn of Winter to the forefront, as the fate of the wall and all of Westeros seems to hang in the balance. Mance's threat is clear. Either the Night's Watch opens the gates, or he will unleash the power of the horn, destroying the very structure that has stood for thousands of years. But as it turns out, Mance's horn is a fake. The horn he presents is large and imposing, but it lacks the ancient power that the stories speak of. Mance's deception, while effective in raising fear among the Night's Watch, ultimately proves to be nothing more than a bluff. The true Horn of Winter, if it exists, remains hidden, its location and its power unknown. The wall itself is more than just a physical barrier between the free folk and the rest of Westeros. It represents the boundary between the known and the unknown, between civilization and the wild, untamed lands of the far north. For the people of the north and the Night's Watch, the wall is a symbol of protection, a line that keeps the dangers beyond at bay. But for the free folk, the wall is a prison, a structure that divides their people, and keeps them confined to the harsh and unforgiving lands of the north. The Horn of Winter, with its rumored ability to bring down the wall, carries immense symbolic weight. If the wall were to fall, it would not just mean the end of a physical barrier, it would represent the breaking of boundaries between worlds, the unleashing of ancient powers that have long been held in check. The wall stands as a testament to the efforts of men to control and contain the forces of nature, magic, and the unknown. The Horn of Winter, if real, would undo all of that, setting loose the very powers the wall was built to protect against. The true nature of the Horn of Winter remains one of the great mysteries of Westeros. If it exists, its power could be more dangerous than anyone realizes. With the looming threat of the White Walkers and the growing tensions between the Free Folk and the realms of men, the Horn could play a significant role in the future of the story. The wall, long thought to be an unassailable barrier, may not be as impenetrable as it seems. As the legends say, when the Horn of Winter is blown, the wall will fall. Whether that day comes remains to be seen, but the stories of Joramun and the Horn of Winter continue to haunt the dreams of those who live in the shadow of the wall, a reminder that the boundaries of the world are more fragile than they appear. Not all great castles of Westeros are built on sheer strength alone. While the towering walls of Harrenhal crumbled under the might of dragonfire, there is another fortress that has stood the test of time, not just because of its physical might, but because of the ancient magic woven into its very stones. That fortress is Storm's End, a place of both legend and mystery, where the line between the mortal and the supernatural blurs. Storm's End is more than just a castle. It is a testament to defiance, built to withstand the wrath of gods. The tale of Storm's End begins with Duran Godsgrief, the first Storm King, whose love for the goddess Elene set the stage for a battle not just between men, but between men and gods. According to legend, Duran fell in love with Elene, the daughter of the sea god and the wind goddess. Their union was a defiance of divine will, and the gods, furious at the insult, sent relentless storms to destroy every castle Duran built. No matter how grand the structure, the gods' wrath would bring it down, leveling it to the ground and leaving nothing but rubble in its place. But Duran Godsgrief was not a man easily defeated. Refusing to surrender to the will of the gods, he embarked on the construction of one final fortress, Storm's End. This castle, he vowed, would be different. It would stand against the might of both sea and sky, a monument to his defiance and his love for Elene. And while Duran's human strength was not enough to withstand the fury of the gods, it is said that magic came to his aid. The stories differ on who helped Duran achieve this seemingly impossible feat. Some say it was the children of the forest, those ancient, mystical beings who once roamed the lands before men. Others believe that it was Bran the Builder, the same legendary figure who is said to have constructed the wall, who lent his knowledge and skill to Duran. Regardless of who aided him, the result was undeniable. Storm's End, a fortress whose walls could not be broken, no matter how fierce the storm. The magic that protects Storm's End is as much a part of its legacy as its towering walls. It is said that the very stones of the castle are imbued with enchantments, powerful enough to keep out not just the fury of the gods, but also any form of supernatural attack. This protection has played a critical role throughout history, most notably during Robert's rebellion. Stannis Baratheon, Robert's younger brother, held Storm's End against a prolonged siege by the forces of the Tyrells. Starved and cut off from supplies, the castle's defenders should have crumbled, but the fortress itself remained unbroken. Not even the might of the Reach, with its vast armies, could breach the walls of Storm's End. It was only after Davos Seaworth, the Onion Knight, smuggled in food that Stannis and his men were able to survive. The magic that protected the castle from storms also seemed to protect it from the crushing weight of siege warfare. But the most striking example of Storm's End's magical defenses came during the War of the Five Kings, when the Red Priestess Melisandre sought to use her blood magic to influence the course of the war. Melisandre, a devout follower of the Lord of Light, attempted to breach Storm's End to assassinate Renly Baratheon, Stannis' younger brother and a rival claimant to the throne. Despite her considerable magical abilities, Melisandre was unable to enter the castle herself, for the magic that protected its walls kept her at bay. It was only through dark sorcery, birthing a shadow assassin, that she was able to bypass the castle's defenses. The Shadow, a creature of darkness and magic, slipped through the magical barriers and killed Renly. But the fact that Melisandre herself was barred from entry speaks to the ancient and formidable power embedded in the fortress. This interplay between the physical and the supernatural makes Storm's End unique among the great castles of Westeros. While other fortresses rely solely on their walls and battlements, Storm's End is protected by forces that cannot be seen, but are deeply felt. It is a place where the line between human ingenuity and mystical power is blurred, where the wrath of gods was met by the will of men, and where both elements have left their mark on the stones that stand. To this day, the legacy of Storm's End is more than just its architecture. It is a symbol of defiance, Duran Godsgrief's defiance against the gods, and the Baratheon family's defiance against the forces that sought to tear them down. The Baratheons, who have ruled from Storm's End for centuries, carry the weight of this history with them. For Stannis, the fortress was not just a home, but a reminder of his family's strength and resilience. And though the castle itself stands as a silent witness to history, its magic continues to influence the fate of those who seek to control it. Storm's End has never fallen, not to storm, siege, or sorcery. Its walls, both real and magical, remain unbroken, a testament to the enduring strength of a castle that was built to defy even the gods themselves. As Westeros continues to change, and as new threats emerge, the question remains: will Storm's End continue to stand, its magic keeping the darkness at bay, or will it one day face a force too powerful even for its ancient defenses? Westeros is filled with tales of powerful rulers, tragic love stories, and unspeakable betrayals, but few legends cast a shadow as dark and mysterious as that of the Night's King. His story, steeped in ancient lore, is one of the most chilling tales passed down through the ages. The Night's King, once a respected leader of the Night's Watch, is said to have succumbed to forbidden love and dark sorcery, setting off a chain of events that threaten not just the Wall, but the entire realm. His legacy, though erased from history, lingers in the icy winds of the far north, a reminder of the dangers that lurk beyond the wall. The story begins with the Night's King as the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. He was a powerful and charismatic leader, chosen to guide the men who stood sentinel at the wall, protecting the realms of men from the dangers that lay in the frozen lands beyond. But power, as many tales warn, can lead even the most honorable of men astray. It was during his time as Lord Commander that he encountered a mysterious woman, her skin said to be as cold as ice. Some believe she was a White Walker, an entity tied to the ancient forces known as the Others, while others suggest she was something even darker and more elusive. Falling deeply in love with this enigmatic woman, the Night's King brought her back to the Night Fort, one of the oldest and most formidable castles along the wall. But this was no ordinary union. Instead of a marriage that would strengthen his leadership, the Night's King declared himself king and his bride queen. Together, they ruled from the Night Fort, but their reign was marked by cruelty and sorcery. The Night's King enslaved his fellow brothers of the Night's Watch, bending them to his will with dark magic, and began committing atrocities that sent fear rippling across the land. Their rule, it is said, was not just one of tyranny, but of the unnatural. The Night's King used sorcery to maintain his power, feeding off the fear and lives of those who stood against him. The Night Fort, already steeped in ancient and eerie history, became the heart of their reign of terror. It is whispered that the very stones of the castle were imbued with the magic of the Others, and that the Night's King sought to turn the wall not into a defense against the terrors beyond, but into a gateway for them. But as with all rulers who stray too far into darkness, the Night's King's time came to an end. It was Brandon the Breaker, king in the north, who recognized the growing danger. Knowing that the Night's King could not be defeated by ordinary means, Brandon sought the help of Joramun, the king beyond the wall, a legendary leader of the Free Folk. Together, these two kings, one of the North and one of the Free Folk, joined forces to bring an end to the Night's King's reign. This rare alliance between the people of the North and the Free Folk was a testament to the gravity of the threat. The battle against the Night's King and his queen was fierce, but in the end, they were defeated, and the Night's King was slain. His reign of terror came to an abrupt halt, and his dark magic was broken. But the legacy of the Night's King was considered so dangerous, so shameful, that all records of his identity were destroyed. His very name was erased from the annals of history, leaving only whispered rumors and fragmented legends. The Night's King became a figure of caution, a warning to future generations of the Night's Watch of what could happen when power is corrupted by the forces of darkness. Even though his name was lost, the mystery of the Night's King's identity remains a subject of speculation among those who study the ancient histories of Westeros. Some believe that he was once a Stark, possibly named Brandon, a member of the ancient First Men who held sway over the North. Others suggest that he was one of the earliest members of the Night's Watch, a man who, like so many before and after him, was drawn into the dangerous mysteries that lie beyond the wall. His connection to the White Walkers and the Others only deepens the enigma surrounding his story, blurring the lines between man and monster, hero and villain. In the world of Game of Thrones, This ancient figure finds a parallel in the Night King, the leader of the White Walkers and the terrifying embodiment of death and winter. Though not a direct adaptation of the Night's King from the books, the Night King in the show draws upon many of the same themes: betrayal, forbidden love, and the seduction of power by forces beyond understanding. Both figures stand as reminders that the Wall, though built to protect, can also be a place where darkness festers and where the line between man and the supernatural is thin. The Night King's story is a stark warning that the Wall is more than just a physical barrier. It is a fragile line between order and chaos, between the living and the dead. His tale, though erased from history, continues to echo in the frozen lands beyond the Wall, a chilling reminder that some forces cannot be easily defeated or forgotten. There are many references to the old gods throughout Westeros, yet their presence is more felt than seen. Unlike the faith of the Seven, with its septs and high septons, the old gods are woven into the very fabric of the land itself. Their influence is ancient, stretching back to the time of the first men and the children of the forest, long before the rise of the Iron Throne or the spread of organized religion. The old gods watch from the weirwoods, their white bark and blood-red leaves serving as silent witnesses to the prayers, oaths, and secrets whispered beneath their branches. The old gods were the deities of the first men, the people who crossed into Westeros from Essos thousands of years ago. When they first arrived, the first men clashed with the children of the forest, cutting down their sacred weirwood trees in a battle for control of the land. But the first men soon realized that there was a deeper power at work in these forests, an ancient connection to the old gods, whose presence could not be denied. After years of bloodshed, the two races forged the pact, ending their war and uniting in their worship of the old gods. From that moment, the first men integrated the old gods into their own beliefs, and their descendants, especially in the north, continue to honor them to this day. The weirwood trees, with their carved faces and red sap, are at the heart of this ancient religion. These trees are more than just symbols, they are believed to be the eyes through which the old gods watch the world. In the north, God's woods, sacred groves where weirwood trees grow, are places of quiet reflection and prayer. It is here, in the stillness of the gods' woods, that the faithful come to seek guidance from the old gods, listening for their voice in the rustling of the weirwood leaves. These trees have stood for thousands of years, and through them, the old gods remain ever vigilant. The connection between the old gods and their followers goes beyond mere worship. Certain individuals, known as greenseers, are said to possess the ability to see through the eyes of the weirwoods, receiving visions of the past, present, and future. Bran Stark, whose journey as a greenseer is one of the most pivotal in Game of Thrones, taps into this ancient power, learning to control his visions and communicate with the old gods in ways that most can only dream of. Greenseers like Bran serve as living links to the mystical power of the old gods, drawing on the knowledge stored within the weirwoods. In addition to greenseers, there are skin changers, people with the ability to enter the minds of animals and control them. This power, too, is believed to be connected to the old gods. a reflection of the deep bond between nature and magic that defines their worship. Skin changes like Jon Snow's dire wolf, Ghost, and Bran's connection to summer show how the old gods' influence extends beyond humanity into the very creatures that inhabit Westeros. The religion of the old gods stands in stark contrast to the more organized and hierarchical faith of the Seven. Where the faith of the Seven boasts septs, septons, and a formal structure, the worship of the old gods is decentralized and personal. There are no priests or ceremonies, no sacred texts or official doctrine. Instead, the faithful connect directly with the old gods, often in solitary prayer, asking for their guidance and protection. This quiet, intimate form of worship has endured in the North, where families like the Starks still swear by the old gods. Their faith is woven into the fabric of Northern culture, passed down from one generation to the next. For the free folk, or wildlings, who live beyond the wall, the old gods represent something even more primal. The free folk live closer to nature than the people of the South, and their worship of the old gods reflects this. They believe that the gods live not only in the weirwoods, but in the water, the sky, and the very ground beneath their feet. Their faith is one of survival, rooted in the wild and untamed lands they call home. This connection to the old gods ties them to the ancient magic of Westeros, a power that has never fully disappeared. The symbolism of the old gods throughout the story is powerful. They represent the deep, ancient magic of Westeros, a connection to the natural world that stands in stark contrast to the political machinations of the Iron Throne. The old gods remind us that while kings and queens may rise and fall, the cycles of nature, life, and death continue unaffected by human ambition. Their influence is subtle, but it is felt in moments of great significance, whether it's Bran's journey as a greenseer, Jon Snow's connection to Ghost, or the quiet prayers offered in the Godswood at Winterfell. Even in a world dominated by politics, war, and conquest, the old gods endure. They are the quiet force behind the weirwoods, the unseen watchers of Westeros. Their magic, though ancient, still pulses beneath the surface of the land, waiting for the right moment to re-emerge. In a world where so much is uncertain, the old gods remain a constant reminder of the power that lies in the roots of the world and the mysteries that have yet to be fully uncovered. Not all the legends of the Night's Watch are about valor and heroism. Some are far darker, serving as cautionary tales about the cost of breaking the sacred vows sworn at the Wall. One of the most chilling stories from the long history of the Night's Watch is that of the 79 Sentinels, a grim reminder of the price of desertion. Their tale is not just one of punishment, but of duty, honor, and the unforgiving consequences of failing to uphold the vows that bind the men of the Night's Watch for life. The story begins with the crime of desertion, one of the most unforgivable acts a brother of the Night's Watch can commit. The 79 Sentinels were members of the Watch who, for reasons lost to history, abandoned their posts and fled the Wall. Desperate and seeking refuge, these men turned to Lord Ricewell, one of their kin, hoping that familial ties would protect them from the harsh justice of the Night's Watch. But they underestimated the weight of the oaths that bound them, and the unyielding sense of honor that govern their fates. Lord Ricewell, torn between his loyalty to his family and his duty to the realm, faced an impossible decision. Though one of the deserters was his own son, Ricewell knew that harboring traitors to the Watch would bring dishonor to his name and endanger the realm's safety. In an act of ultimate sacrifice, he chose honor over blood, sending all 79 men, including his own son, back to the Wall to face the justice of the Night's Watch. This decision, though heartbreaking, is one of the many examples in Westerosi history where the demands of honor outweigh the bonds of family. Upon their return to the Wall, the deserters were brought before the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. In this ancient time, the laws of the Watch were as unforgiving as the cold winds that swept across the Wall. Desertion was punishable by death, and the Lord Commander had no choice but to enforce this grim law. But instead of a swift execution, the Lord Commander devised a punishment that would serve as a lasting reminder to all who would think to betray their brothers. The 79 Sentinels were not simply executed. They were sealed into the ice of the Wall itself, their bodies facing northward, toward the frozen wilderness that they had once sworn to defend. In life, they had turned their backs on their duty, abandoning the very post they had pledged to hold. In death, their watch would continue, an eternal vigil, bound in ice. The Lord Commander's decree echoed through the ages. They left their posts in life, so in death, their watch goes on forever. For the men of the Night's Watch, this punishment was more than a simple execution. It was a warning. To take the black was to swear a lifelong oath, binding oneself to a duty that could not be broken. The Wall was the only thing standing between the realm of men and the dangers of the far north, and the men of the Watch could not afford weakness, disloyalty, or fear. The 79 Sentinels, frozen in the Wall, became a living reminder of what happens to those who falter. This haunting tale was retold by Bran Stark during his journey beyond the Wall. As Bran and his companions made their way through the frozen wasteland, he shared the story of the 79 Sentinels with Yojen Reed. For Bran, the tale was not just an eerie legend, but a reflection of the unyielding discipline that the Night's Watch demanded from its members. It was a story of honor, sacrifice, and the harsh realities faced by those who had sworn their lives to protect the realm. For Bran, raised in the traditions of the North and steeped in the stories of his family's long connection to the Night's Watch, the story of the 79 Sentinels held a deeper meaning. It was a reminder of the cost of duty, a cost that many members of his own family had paid over the centuries. The men of the Watch had given up their homes, their titles, and their families for the sake of a greater cause. The price of desertion was not just death, but the complete and utter loss of honor, a fate worse than death for men bound by their oaths. The legacy of the 79 Sentinels endures within the Night's Watch as a powerful symbol of duty and the consequences of betrayal. Their eternal vigil, frozen in the ice of the Wall, stands as a grim warning to all who take the black. To desert one's post is to betray not just the Watch, but the realm itself. The story of the 79 Sentinels serves as a reminder that the Wall is not just a physical barrier, but a symbol of the sacrifice, loyalty, and honor required of those who defend it. In the cold, unforgiving world of the Night's Watch, where life is harsh and the stakes are high, The tale of the 79 Sentinels is passed down from brother to brother. It is a story meant to inspire fear, but also to reinforce the gravity of the vows sworn at the wall. For those who take the black, there is no turning back, no escape from the duty they have chosen. The wall is their home, their life, and if necessary, their tomb.